Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to dig into Part 2 for the search for Luveno spoiler. The spoiler for Part 1 of this adventure was reviewed in my previous video, as well as a deep dive review of Elise Landale's character sheet. Before talking about Part 2, I wanted to correct something I said in my previous video, which is that I thought this tracking wheel was to track death saves and petrify saves. Skydawn Games has since released an image that is very slightly clearer, and I can now see that the wheel says survive and perish, so the top half of this wheel is for tracking successful death saving throws, and the bottom is for tracking failed ones.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead.
And now to dive into Part 2 of the search for Luveno. This section is titled Triada Prison, which is the name of the prison from Phantasy Star 1 where Dr. Luveno is held captive. We're given an image of a wing-eye, which is a classic Phantasy Star monster. The first paragraph mentions that the adventurers are going to have to find the whereabouts of Dr. Luveno, and there is a bit of text for the DM to read the player group that discusses that Triada used to be an outpost, but now is a prison for those who oppose King Lassic. The first titled section is Exploring Triada, and there's some mention here of needing keys to get through several locked doors, potentially 2 keys. I can't make out all the details. Number 1 is listed as the entrance path. Here the players can find an NPC who's a Palmanian civilian. He's wearing a uniform and doesn't immediately notice the party members. Characters can interact with him to learn of his story. They can also attempt a DC 11 insight check to presumably pull more information out of him, and they can ask him about the whereabouts of Dr. Luveno. Sounds like there might be a quest or a subquest related to finding some of his possessions. Next, there's advice on using maps for the DM, and included on the next page is a map of Triada Prison. It looks very similar to the map of the dungeon from the video game, slightly widened and expanded so that your player characters can have room to navigate and move tactically if combat breaks out. There's a small reminder on using characters' passive perceptions, which is a score that enemies roll against when trying to sneak up on one of the player characters. I believe the next section says retrieving the pack, which is likely retrieving the items that belong to the Palmanian NPC that the characters have already engaged with. Following that is returning to something that starts with the letter B. This looks like the name of the Palmanian NPC, and so further makes me believe that the characters have to retrieve his possessions, return them, and then he'll be willing to maybe give them a key or help them out. We'll have to see. There's a small blurb on dealing with NPCs, and then we reach number 2, the main hall. This section references a robot cop. In the original video game, robot cops guarded Triada Prison, and when Elise encounters one, if she doesn't have the appropriate credentials, she'll be attacked. The next section is titled Burst Saves, and says that the robot cop has a burst fire attack that requires a special saving throw called a burst save. The save modifier is in the movement section on a player's character sheet. I also found additional information on burst saves in the Esper Genesis free basic rule PDF, and so we have a little bit more information now on what this score means on the character sheet. A burst save is a special type of dexterity saving throw and appears to be classified differently, as certain equipment and class features can add bonuses to it that don't apply in other situations where you're rolling your dexterity save. And the last little bit is about conditions. It says some attacks and spells cause conditions, such as poisoned, restrained, frightened, etc. Rules for these can be found in the Quick Start rules. That's everything I was able to pull out of this image. If you caught anything I didn't, or if I got anything wrong, let me know in the comments. I expect my next video will be to cover the announcements made during Skydawn Games' first live Twitch stream. They'll be discussing Esper Genesis and Phantasy Star TTRPG from Gary Con Gaming Convention. If you're interested, I've also included a link in the description of this video. And that's it. That's the show, and so until next time, take care.